Welcome everybody hopping in here. I'm going to go ahead and let people filter in just a little bit before we get started. And I'll probably kick us off before we get started with any particular questions. I'll get started with taking us through a couple things that I think are worth taking a look at inside of Ezoic here soon. Some new things and maybe some reports that people aren't familiar with, and we'll touch on those. And then please, as you have questions, start dropping them into the chat or into the Q&A portion over here. So this is a Q&A. I don't have a lot prepared. I like to try to introduce new things and show people cool things. Sometimes you don't know what questions to ask until you have somebody to kind of kick things off. We didn't pre-collect any for these, and partially just trying to see how often we want to do these and how well they're attended. Just trying to find as many different formats as possible to connect with everyone and to connect each other. I know that one thing that we'd like to do is build our community and access to other publishers using Ezoic and things along those lines even better. So that's something that we plan to have a lot of new initiatives on here in the short term. So that being said, go ahead, drop your questions into the Q&A portion or into the chat over here, and we'll go ahead and I'll get started. So I'll start by sharing my screen. So for those that don't know, my name is Tyler Bishop. I'm the CMO here at Ezoic, and yeah, I've done a handful of these. Usually when we haven't done one in a while, they're very well attended, and then over time it kind of the trend, I guess, is that we see less and less publishers hop on these. So we're always trying to find different ways to connect with people. So yeah, leave your questions into the question box, questions in the chat. I'm going to highlight a couple things inside of the Ezoic dashboard, inside of Big Data Analytics. This is a tiny site that I run. Actually, I haven't put any content on it in a really long time. Shame on me. And I say that because one of the things that we found consistently with Ezoic publishers is that the ones that are consistently producing the content the most, those are the ones that tend to grow the fastest. So if I really wanted to grow this little guy up here, I would spend more time creating content. So here underneath the monetization section of the Ezoic dashboard, this is where you have a lot of different controls related to your site. So you'll be able to see all your placeholders here. You can turn on and off ad tester, things like that. If you don't have an ads.txt file, you can manage it here. This is where you would link any mediated ad networks or anything like that. So this is where you connect AdSense or yeah, if you had another ad network or something like that that you previously were working with, you could link it directly into here. You can disable ads by page. I covered in a recent education section some of the caveats here. Control your native ads, max ads per page, which again, you'll notice I have it off. It's actually not something we recommend. Partially because if you have your Ezoic settings properly, it doesn't really make sense to set a max ads per page, because Ezoic will actually, in almost every case, show fewer ads over time, partially because we can drive up supply and demand by actually restricting it for different types of visitors and understanding how advertisers bid inside of exchanges. All bidding is based on historical data, so it's one of the really nice caveats of having machine learning doing a lot of these things for you. And then being able to go in and block specific advertisers. If you saw like some kind of really bad ad or something like that on your site, you could actually take that link from the display ad and block that advertiser. So I mentioned the settings, and this is something I don't think a lot of people are aware of, but underneath the settings tab up here, you can actually go into optimization goals. And this is really what we recommend. I think people always ask, like, if I change it to revenue focus, will I make more money? If I change it to user experience focus, what will that do? And the machines do exactly what they say they do. So balance is going to find the best balance between maximizing revenue without sacrificing user experience by looking at things like bounce rate, engaged page views per visit, engagement time, things like that. And it will increase your ad rates over time automatically by driving up bids based on supply and demand inside of the ecosystem. Revenue focused will put a weighting towards revenue. So if you can make more money with a small sacrifice to maybe bounce rate or page views per visit, usually not a very big one, it'll go ahead and make those choices. However, it's still designed to increase ad rates over time, because actually just flooding the site with more ads will decrease revenue over time. And user experience will shift that weighting in the other direction, where it's like, if you could make maybe a little bit less money, but you could improve bounce rate, page views per visit, Ezoic will try to make those choices as well. And then custom settings really just kind of gives you the flexibility to kind of customize exactly where you'd like that to go. I recommend kind of dealing with the slider over in this area, but if you want to get into, when you say revenue, do you just mean total earnings and revenue, page CPMs, viewability, impression CPM? I don't recommend any of that, partially because the machines are kind of geared out of the box to generate the most total revenue, your best interest. But we have all kinds of different publishers. Some of our brand publishers may have direct deals running through Ezoic, and they may want to increase viewability because that's something that the brands ask for. Same thing with UX. Maybe you have a theory on SEO that no one else has, or something unique, and you could say, well, I want to shift mine towards average engagement time or page views per visit. You could do that as well. So that's totally within your control. I like to leave mine here unbalanced. And then one other thing I'll point out here before I start getting into some of the questions, which I'm not seeing a whole bunch here. So this is going to be really short today if I don't get any questions, everybody. One of the things I can share here inside of big data analytics that I think is really, really helpful is getting into this content section. So my favorite is really landing pages. You've probably, if you've attended some of these things before, you hear us like really harp on this a lot, but it's because traditionally, I can't tell you how many publishers like make these mistakes. And what I mean is, I often get asked, like, if you were going to start a site, I'm going to open my date range up here just a little bit. If you were to start a site, like, what kind of site would you start? And realistically, I always tell people to start a site that you're passionate about, like whatever it is that, you think you can make a good site where there's, an audience that, would find your content interesting or something like that, do that. And then the next question is always like, well, what if it's like a low earning niche or something like that? My answer is always like, you can always find those gems within that lower earning, let's say it's jujitsu. I have a jujitsu site, pull it up, but it doesn't get many page views these days. Within jiu-jitsu, there's content that has high EPMVs. And the best way to look at that is by looking at your landing pages. So what I've done here is I've gone to content, landing pages inside of big data analytics. If you want to look at this report for yourself, I'm dropping it actually into the chat right now. So if you're logged in, you can actually use that link and it'll take you to this report. And then you can drag and drop your columns here. So I like to drag EPMV all the way over here. And then I like to sort it. So you can see here, my average EPMV is 885 on this site during July 23rd through August 11th. And on the good side of that, if I was like, all right, well, I want to increase my EPMV. How would I do that? One of the ways would be to create content that is similar to some of my like higher earning content. And so I can look here, I can see this article here about MRIs on your knee. This one about stem cell therapy for your ankle and your knee. Once again, knee stuff seeming to be quite a bit higher. stuff about bulging discs, stuff about a specific product, including Fitbit. So these are all earning much higher than my traditional EPMV, and this one's nearly double. So one of the things that I would want to do is maybe create more content like that. But then I'll go over and I'm like, only 7 visits. Maybe it's hard to rank for, right? So you could even throw in a filter here where you could say, exclude anything with visits that are less than, let's say 100. It's a small site. For you, it might be, you might want to pick something a little bit larger. And Ezoic will start to reload the same information, but it's going to just filter out the stuff with the lower page views. So you can see now my EPMV of stuff that's actually getting a decent amount of visits for this date range on this site is $9. So it's slightly higher. And I can actually see, okay, well, I've got a couple articles here, specifically 2. One is a specific probiotic, one is a specific product. So I can see I've got some of these more niche topics here, and they're focused on specific products or things that people offer. So that may be like a nice kind of, I guess, tip for me is maybe create more content that's kind of niche product specific. And this is kind of where I'm finding that happy medium between higher EPMVs and more traffic. So that's one of the things I really like to do. You could probably get in a little bit deeper here if you wanted to look at traffic sources and you want to see exactly what sources were actually driving. Actually, let's go to traffic source here. So I can see here, google.com, Pinterest, all that kind of stuff, but I can drag my EPMV over on this side here. So I'm under traffic sources, traffic source, sort by EPMV, and I can actually see I've done very little to facilitate any Pinterest traffic or Reddit traffic. But you can see here my Pinterest traffic, and I've got it in 2 different instances here, neither from the US. And my EPMVs are nearly double their average. I'm not getting a lot of visits from there, but you can see Yahoo, Reddit, those are other high sources. Again, not lots of traffic from those places. You can see a little bit from Quora here. So I can get a better idea of like my EPMVs by different sources as well. So you may come to find, you can see here Pinterest once again, traditionally higher. So just regular Pinterest.com even is higher, and there is actually some traffic from there. So it might be a good key for me, somebody that's literally done almost nothing. Well, not almost nothing, literally nothing on this site with Pinterest, to maybe invest a little bit more time there because financially it would be probably a good source of traffic for this site, given the fact that I've earned some revenue from here. So I'm going to go ahead and unshare my screen while I get to some of the questions. Oh, that link that I shared, sorry about that. It only went to the panelists. So there you go. Hopefully you guys can see that one. Thanks, Ellen. Yes, the Facebook group. So I will pull that up here and share that here as well. It's not something that we've spent a lot of time growing. I would say my vision for what we can do with a community, especially with 20,000, 30,000 publishers, I'd like to think that we could do something really, really cool. And I think that that's something we've got in progress. But what we did at the last Pubtelligence was invited a lot of Pubtelligence attendees into this Facebook group. And yeah, if that's a medium that people use quite a bit to communicate about stuff, we certainly want to make use of that as much as possible. Do you have any plans to get Cloudflare Rocket Loader working with these Ezoic scripts? We noticed a dramatic page load time increase when Rocket Loader was disabled. That's not really a question that I am probably the best to answer. I can tell you that one of the things that we've found in terms of sites integrating with Cloudflare is the inside of our support knowledge base, we have a decent amount of articles that kind of go through some of the different configurations and settings. You could contact your account manager or support if you have a specific question related to how we could support a specific setting in Cloudflare. We're pretty good at supporting most things there. I would say there's maybe some other things to look at there as it relates to page load time. But also page load time, I would say is, it depends what metric we're looking at too, because total page load time is probably the worst metric for publishers for a couple of different reasons. I covered some of that in our speed education webinar a little while back, which I'll try to pull this up here and share my screen again. If you go into the Ezoic YouTube channel, this is what the main page looks like. And over here you have playlists. And inside of the playlist, we have Ezoic Academy is our tutorial on if you want to get more like into big data analytics and what you can do with it. There's a bunch in there. And then we also have our Ezoic education series, and the Ezoic education series, I clicked on the wrong view full playlist. The Ezoic education series has got a lot of really good stuff in here, but specifically this one, maximizing site speed with Ezoic monetization, I think is really good. So next question is, thanks for hosting the Q&A. Can you share a few tips on how to use big data analytics reports to find what topics you should focus on going further? Also, do you have time to go over some tips on big data analytics to create better content, come up with better strategy? Yeah, so that's kind of what I was going into a little bit, but I can kind of hop back over here. So personally, we're big fans of the landing pages. I'm a big fan of traffic source, like the Pinterest kind of revelation, I guess, for this site is that I should probably spend a little bit of time seeing if I can, you know, personally drive more Pinterest traffic because it's higher than my average EPMV, and seems like I've just organically had some success there without completely trying. So that would be worth an investment of my time. The other stuff that I would say is if you haven't connected Search Console yet to Ezoic, I highly recommend it. I don't know if I've got it connected on this site or not. I can pull up one that does. Oh yeah, so I've got one here. So again, this site really lacking for data, but you can see here, one of the things that I think is interesting is you can actually see the search queries once you're connected to Search Console. So Google Search Console is a look at your actual website history from Google. So Google actually gives you the data directly from their SERP. Where is, do I not have injury health blog in here? Crazy. Either way, I'll pull up another site. So this is my jiu-jitsu site. So inside of Search Console, I can look at performance and things like that. And it's showing me my total clicks from the search engine. It's showing me how many times different queries that I rank for have showed up. It shows me my average ranking position for different queries. And we actually bring that data into big data analytics. So if you haven't connected it yet, you just have to go to the SEO tab here. And you'll have something here that says Google Search Console authorization. And that's something that you can authorize, and we'll import your Search Console data, and then we'll marry that up with revenue and all your UX metrics. So I'm a big fan of this from the standpoint of being able to see, like, number one, if you go and augment your older content and you improve the rankings, like what is the ROI of that? So you may do some work on your site and you may want to improve the ranking position. And if you do, what is the benefit of that? So I'm dragging over my revenue and position. So I could actually compare like you do in, you can do in Google Analytics. So I could look at this period and I could click over here on compare. I could just say like, look at, you know, Monday through Friday last week compared to the previous week, apply that, run report. And Ezoic is going to compare now, and I can actually see, so my average position increased here 16%, but my revenue improved 74%. So that's really good return on investment, meaning if I can increase my average ranking position by just a little bit, my revenue seems to respond in a pretty massive direction here. You know, again, I'm looking at really small data here, but I can see which queries specifically I saw the largest increases on. So you can see sprained ankle pop, Fitbit versus Whoop, Whoop strap, that sort of thing. And I can also see things like correlations between engaged page views and page views per visit. So I can see my engaged page views are up 48.15%. So I'm engaging this audience pretty good. So one of the things you might want to do when you're augmenting older content is focus on basically what types of things, video, images, smaller broken up paragraphs, more strong tags, things like that. Can that sort of material engage your audience? And if so, you may be able to take a look at, when you do that, are you improving your average ranking position? And if so, we can see there's a pretty good return here. So a lot of us invest time or energy or maybe even money in SEO. So you can kind of see, what is the impact of that on my bottom line. The other thing that I really like with this is being able to pull EPMV over here. So you can see my ranking position is good, which is awesome, but my average ranking position going up could just be me getting more traffic. So that's where the revenue could come from, right? But you can see my visits actually went up about 50%. So again, we're looking at small data here, but 50% increase in visits. That means I'm actually making more money per visit than I was before. And we can see that here with EPMV going up 16.5%. So in this case, and this is something we've seen before, advertisers might be willing to pay more for content that ranks for certain queries or search terms or something like that once a site lands on there. So one of the things that an advertiser will bid on that I don't know that people are overly familiar with is they get the data on things like traffic source. So when they see that someone is coming from Google and maybe even other certain characteristics of that user, they may bid more. And so knowing that somebody is, ranking higher for a term like, Fitbit versus Whoop being a really good example here. That's something that is pretty nice to note because advertisers may say, hey, this article is worth paying more for because the chance of us getting someone to pay attention to our product or our ad is higher. So you can see that, slightly higher EPMV there. Yeah, and Colin said, he noticed a massive increase in Pinterest traffic by adding a pin button to the images. That's exactly the small type of stuff that I think publishers experiment with all the time. And then, you see a bump in, maybe Pinterest traffic if you're paying attention or maybe even revenue, but you might not ever be paying attention to the fact that that small little thing is actually driving major results. Cause I think the life of a publisher a lot of times is doing lots of little things. And yeah, that's really fascinating. The other thing that I'll say with the Search Console data here is I'm gonna turn off my compare so we can look at things a little bit more seamless. So I've got my search queries here for last week, Monday through Friday. And if I pulled a larger date range, I could probably sort here by EPMV. And again, I'd probably want to sort my visits because some of these are one visit, so I'm not getting a great sample size. But let's say for a second that I actually do see that I've got a certain query. Maybe it's not getting a ton of visits, but my EPMV is $85 and my average is $8. And this is really, really common. You guys would be surprised. But a good example of this is we have a travel site that they noticed recently that their content on pretty much every travel topic you can think of, like traveling to Bali or whatever, all that content is producing a much lower EPMV in terms of search queries than it was before. Advertisers just aren't spending as much. However, they had a whole bunch of content on RVs, and RV content had doubled its EPMV recently. And so they were like, oh my gosh, we need to write more RV content. So that's another really cool takeaway inside of big data analytics. Let's see here. I'll get into the chat. So Pablo asks, how can I So Pablo says he thinks he sees too many ads because Ezoic believes he's a super fan of his website. So if you're talking about just when you browse your own site, you can look at it in incognito mode. Ezoic is actually really good at figuring out when there's, so one of the things that'll happen a lot of times. So let's see if I can pull up my side here. I haven't been on it in a second. So I might see lower quality ads or even more ads because Ezoic may perceive me as a quote unquote low value visitor, meaning what's going to happen is advertisers bid less and less if they see a user that maybe visits tons of pages and never clicks on anything. The viewability sucks. The performance is really low. You're on your own site, so you're probably not the advertiser's intended audience. And so when Ezoic sees a low value visitor, sometimes that may be the ones where ad density is the highest because that's how you maximize revenue there without actually harming bids. And it's when you get real visitors and things like that that you will traditionally see like Ezoic start to make some of those smart decisions about pulling back ad density, excuse me. And the other thing you can do is you can actually set a parameter. So you can go into monetization. You could go this, let's see. Add restrictions. I think it's gonna make me install the app. Oh yeah, I can create a new rule here. So I could say 5, let's say. And then I can create a rule. And then I could say UTM content. And I could say the content contains my own site. So then all you would have to do is, you see this little string right here? So all you'd want to do here is go question mark UTM source equals, and then put content equals. So see over here where it, oops, content UTM underscore content equals. If you put my own site, that would be what you get. So for my site, it would be question mark UTM underscore, let's see, UTM source equals, I think that's what it is, equals, right? It's been a minute. There we go. Actually, I'd go UTM content. That's one we picked. And anytime you added that string, the question mark there, the question mark just says to give this what's in the browser to something else. Anytime you saw UTM content equals my own site, you could set all kinds of different rules. So if you wanted to limit the ad density or something like that when you're browsing your own site, you could do it through that through this tab here and create a rule. Let's see. Oh, Helen said I'm not sharing my site here. Let me do that again really quick here and make sure I'm sharing. So if you go into monetization, and then you go down here to add restrictions. So this is one I just created. So I could say rule set, like turn native ads on or off, display ads limit. I could say 5, only apply on the pages where the rules match. And then I could say refer or whatever. I would pick UTM content and then contains my own site, and then create. And then all I have to do then is then take this little parameter right here, this question mark UTM underscore content equals my own site, and it will apply whatever rule you've just applied there. So if you wanted to look at your site with a specific ad configuration or something like that, that would allow you to do that. You could set that up however, but the question mark just means it's a query string. It won't change anything else other than that's being passed along to Ezoic or the browser or anything like that. It's how marketers often track like campaign performance. Colin says, what do you consider a good total RPM for a website? Well, if you've watched any of my past material on here, let me, 1 minute, I'm going to pull something up. If you've watched anything that I've done in the past, I will quickly point out that total RPM, or I guess page RPM, is probably the worst metric for publishers to focus on. That said, session RPM or EPMV is a much better metric. And Colin, if you want, I'm more than happy to dive into that and explain a little bit about why, if you're interested. If yes, say yes. If no, just say, I just want kind of an answer. All right, cool. So I'm gonna share my screen. I'll make this fast, I promise. So real quick, CPMs, that's how much an advertiser buys a single ad impression for. RPM is how much revenue you make per 1,000 ad impressions. So you add up all the CPMs across however many page views, and you average that. That's your RPM. EPMV is the total earnings divided by 1,000 visits or sessions. So it's looking at if a single visitor visits multiple page views, that'll be included as well. And then you've got basically kind of flat total earnings. So what I think people would be surprised to learn is that EPMV is the only one of these metrics that can actually tell you if you make more or less money. Meaning, if you look at total revenue, can't that tell you? Well, no, not really, because if you make more money in March than you did in April, but in April you just had fewer visitors, it doesn't necessarily mean you made less money. It means you had lower traffic. That's a different problem. The most amount of money that you can make is determined by how much money you make per visitor. And that's what you really want to optimize for, because you're always trying to grow your traffic. Let's face it. So that's basically the math behind EPMV. It's site earnings divided by 1,000, or site earnings divided by the number of visitors divided by 1,000. That's your EPMV. You can use that metric and that math to add up basically what your EPMV is once you marry together affiliate revenue, any other source of revenue that your site might make. And that's why EPMV is like the paramount metric here. CPMs are single ads, RPMs are divided by 1,000 ad impressions, and EPMV is essentially how much money you make per visitor. Without going into what is an ad unit, ad impressions, hopefully you guys know the difference between a page view and a session. One page view is just a single page view during a user session. 2 page views could occur within a single user session, meaning you have one person, let's say I click on my chromeonbox.com, and then I click on a second article on that site. That's 2 page views. That's 1 session. And the reason why this is important and why RPMs are usually really misleading is that you'll see things like, one page you might get a really high RPM, while another page you might get a fairly lower one. But if that high RPM is causing a high bounce rate and the low RPM causes them to on average visit more pages, you might actually make a lot more money from the lower RPM treatment than you would the higher one. And that's why EPMV is so important. So that's kind of the, that's the math behind that particular example. I'm trying to see if there's anything else here that's valuable. No. But to answer your question about basically how much should a site earn from advertising, I'm trying to see, I've got a couple different slides in here that I thought were good for that. Nah. Well, I guess, yeah, this slide kind of gets to it. So basically your site earnings are basically controlled by three things: attributes you control, attributes you don't control, and how you measure the value. So how much what's a good RPM? And interesting, like, question that I've never heard before. Hear it literally every day, and my answer is almost always the same: between $1 and $1,000, because we have publishers that get lots of traffic that see both. And basically this is what is going to determine that. So your audience is basically the short answer, but realistically that audience can go up or down in terms of how much they earn for you based on the ad density, the ad size, the ad color, the networks, the combinations, how they dilute each other. 5 ads might not make as much money as 4 ads for a certain type of visitor because the ads dilute each other, and there's restricting the demand can increase the demand. So all those types of things come into play. And then those are just the things you control. The stuff you don't control is like where your audience is coming from, what time of day, what type of browser, what type of device, if they're coming from Google, if they're coming from Pinterest. So realistically, getting into big data and being able to see your traffic sources and stuff like that, that's going to give you a better answer for you. So if you want to know like what's a good site RPM, I need to ask like 100 other questions. And even at the end of it, I'm not going to have a great one for you because I used to have an example here. I don't think that I've got it in here. No, it's not in any of these. Yeah, but essentially one of the things that I think is really interesting is that in general, we have 3 different sites that are all on the exact same technology. They all get more than 1 million page views per month. And they all, without being too specific, is a particular brand of technology. And they produce very, very similar content. And one of them, I think last month, had a $9 EPMV. One had a $22 EPMV. And then the other one had an $18 EPMV. And their audiences are really similar. Like they're mostly mobile, mostly US traffic. So you're like, what's the difference? One of them's got to be doing something wrong, right? They're all using Ezoic. They could probably all do various things to maybe optimize some of their settings differently. But realistically, if you go in and you try to figure out exactly why, you can see that it's really the landing pages and the queries. So the one with the highest EPMV, you can see their ranking for the queries that are getting the highest EPMVs, and the one with the lowest one, it's traditionally ranking for the stuff that's the lower ones. One of them was reviews. So one of them ranked higher for a lot of review-based stuff in that technology. And I can't remember if that was the low one or the high one, but complex answer because it's an answer that if I gave you just, $10 or something like that, it would be doing you a massive disservice. Colin says, interesting, you cannot see eCPM in Google Analytics. Yeah, you actually can't see any revenue other than if you can tie AdSense to Google Analytics or AdX. So Google Analytics will not actually report revenue. So when you're looking at revenue in Ezoic, you're looking at revenue from all sources. So Ezoic leverages thousands of networks and header bidders and exchanges and PMP deals. And so we marry all that together. And it's actually something that most publishers, I don't think, ever have a chance to look at. But again, you can do the math yourself. You can just take the total amount of money that you earn in a month, divided by the number of visits, divided by 1,000, and that'll give you your site's EPMV. And I have so many publishers that are really, really smart, and they track that in a spreadsheet every month, and that's really, really intelligent. Logan asks, how much stock do you put in the Google Quality Rater guidelines regarding ads? I've seen sometimes in the guidelines where examples, it will rate a page low quality, and part of that determines the main content is broken up by large ads that disrupt the user experience. I put no stock in them in terms of ads because I know from working with the Google Certified Publishing Partner team that if ads are negatively affecting your something about your rankings or anything related to webmaster stuff, you'll get a notification in Search Console. So I'll share again. actually, let's see. So if you Google ad experience, there's a thing called the ad experience report inside of Google Search Console. And you can look at this at desktop and mobile. Let's pull, none of those will work. So let's go here. It's not letting me pick any of these for whatever reason. Try one more time. Let's go. Looks like their site's not working. Well, you can pull your report here from Search Console. It was working here recently because I used it as an example, and it'll tell you if you've got any abusive ad experiences or anything like that that could be causing an issue for your site. According to the ad experience report, Ezoic is designed so that it always complies with the better ad standards. We're actually a part of the IAB coalition there and help design all the specific specifications for it and things like that. So the best thing I can tell you is that Ezoic is like automatically handling that. One thing, a statement that I've made before that I'm happy to make again is that after every core update, we always look at how our publishers fare, and then we look at basically the web at large or whatever. And our publishers universally, the majority of them see some kind of uptick. So after every core algorithm update, we look at page use for our publishers, and there's usually this little spike, and it's because we have since the last 4 or 5 years performed really, really well on that. And we're really proud of that, partially because we're always aiming to optimize for UX. And it's hard to see that because you don't always see what decisions a machine is making and what every visitor sees. But that's the difficulty of looking at objective data sometimes is, you know, you don't really get to understand why certain decisions are made and things like that. But we get to look at things as a whole. And that looks like all the questions I've got. That's it. Hopefully that's helpful. It's kind of a grab bag of different topics and things like that we covered today. If there's anything in particular that you'd like to have covered in the future, or you just would like to see more videos on particular topics, I'm going to throw you my email here. My inbox looks exactly what you would imagine it looks like, but when it comes to our customers, it's very, very rare that I don't take the time to read them and collect any feedback that I can. And if there's anything I can help with, I'll always try to find either time to respond or find the right people to help. So that's it. Thanks everybody for joining today. And wait, one more question. Oh, just to thank you. All right. Thanks everyone. Have a good one.